Welcome to the social media and Bitcoin panel. I'm going to be moderating today. Since we have such a close-knit group, we're going to kind of get a little bit off of the strict kind of format, and we're going to have a conversation. So just a little bit about myself. I'm a singer-songwriter. I do a lot of music about liberty themes, and I wrote a Bitcoin song that you may have heard before. I'll be performing tonight at the Bitcoin Cert. So if we could go down the line and everybody introduce yourselves, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, my name's PJ Christie. I'm an Austin entrepreneur, and I've been watching Bitcoin as a group that I've been working with here in town called Mastercoin, is talking about building up an open source layer on top of Bitcoin, like an application layer. I also do a lot of social media and internet marketing.
So I'm Seth Blaustein. I'm local to Austin. I'm a film and television producer, entrepreneur, and I also have an event in Austin in June called Voice and Exit, which explores ideas along the lines of what we're exploring today as well. So I kind of, social media is something that I have a lot of experience with, but really I come into this from a storytelling perspective of what you would maybe want to share, or how you could more positively share that.
Hi, I'm James D'Angelo. I do some videos on Bitcoin at a site called World Bitcoin Network. It's not a lot of people at the network so far. I'm there by myself. But that's the beauty of this kind of media, because I get the feedback I need, and I can pretend I'm bigger than I am. And then I also do a lot of furious Reddit posting with about 95 different aliases. So you've probably read some of my rants somewhere. That's it.
Hi, my name is Angel Clark. I am a talk radio host, and I specialize in social media. So Facebook, Twitter, Google+, YouTube, all that fun stuff. Tumblr is one of my favorites, actually. So I use social media to reach hundreds of thousands of people, and it's a wonderful experience.
So why don't you guys tell me what you think is so exciting about Bitcoin and how social media can help? I mean, obviously, we could tweet about it, but tell me a little bit of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking right before we came on was that how Zynga now is one of these Facebook game companies that has publicly traded or was acquired or something, but they're able to charge subscriptions via Bitcoin, and I think that's pretty interesting when people are using social gaming and Bitcoin. That's one of the things.
Why would people, out of curiosity, why would people be more inclined to use Bitcoin? I mean, why is Bitcoin better than donating with $1 or something like that?
Well, if you just imagine online poker, for example, is one of these games that's been around for a long time. And as long as you're using traditional credit card and credit card processing, then you're always going to have to report that as income, for example. So I think that casino gaming online is one of those great opportunities.
Okay, cool. Seth?
I think what excites me the most about Bitcoin is that it's a technology that matches the value systems that we've evolved with as a culture closer and closer. So the kind of monetary system that we have right now, I think, being centralized, does not enable communities and individuals to flourish in the same way that a decentralized, more resilient system like Bitcoin can provide. So for me, that's probably what's most exciting about it. It gives more control to the individual, and overall just a more resilient economic format.
I think media really lives in the ground where you can send somebody money for under $2. That's pretty much what credit cards cut off. The other day in one of my aliases on Reddit as Bitchrome, so I'll out that one personal alias and then I'll delete the account tomorrow. But I made a comment on the Mt. Gox thing. Some guy wrote, hey, maybe they're going to take the time off, write a book, and make another $1 million. And I wrote, there'll be 2 Chapter 11s. And it got enormously upvoted. People thought it was really funny. But the amazing thing is, upvotes are awesome, right? And you really feel great. Likes are awesome, and you feel great. But 2 guys sent me $3.64 as a Bitcoin beer using Bitcoin. And I did. I turned around, I didn't buy beer. I bought hard apple cider. But, you know, it's a powerful, powerful thing to add to this. We forget how powerful a like is and how it's changed the world. Add to that sort of this monetary feedback. I didn't know the guy. He didn't know me. He might know me now. But it's pretty amazing.
Can I just say that's an excellent phrase that you just used there? A like can change the world. I mean, sometimes we laugh about, all right, what can a like actually do? But it can actually do quite a bit. And when you include Bitcoin and Dogecoin and people giving you tips for statements that they like that's awesome. It's fantastic. Now, one of the things that I really love about social media and Bitcoin is I'm a hashtag addict, right? So I like to search hashtags on Facebook, on Tumblr, on Twitter. And a hashtag is when you put a pound sign basically in front of a term. So if you search for a hashtag Bitcoin, you will find hundreds of thousands of people that you don't know, but they know Bitcoin, and you can interact with them, and you can talk to them and find out what they know, and you can exchange information. And so social media is kind of, you know, I live in the middle of nowhere, right? I live in a town that has 3,000 people in it.
Where's that?
In Rehoboth Beach, Delaware.
Okay.
Yeah. But through social media, I am able to reach so many people that think like me, that feel like me. You know, my libertarian meetings in my town, they have 12 people in them. 12! But I don't even have to go to those anymore because I can talk to everyone online.
Okay, great. Good answers, everybody. I think, you know, I have some questions that I wanted to touch on. One of the things that excites me is how Bitcoin can be used to change the world, and with social media we can raise a lot of awareness for different charities. There was a charity panel this morning.
That was amazing.
So do you guys have anything that you want to say about that, and how you could encourage people to give through social media to charities and raise awareness for things?
I'll pass on to you on that. I was really impressed with the meeting, but I don't have any input on it.
Okay.
I think that there's two elements to that, right? There's individual charities or causes that you could donate to right now, and then there's the overall elevation in net effect that you get from having Bitcoin being adopted on a broader level, which enables more of things like Sean's outposts and those kinds of things to become relevant and be able to act. So how do you on that, I'm more interested on that broader level probably, how you get more and more people to adopt Bitcoin. And social media, I think, is this new infrastructure of storytelling. And so the question is, what stories are you telling? What archetypes are you kind of activating within people to get them to adopt it? And within that, I think there's a couple things. You know, there's kind of this fight to educate right now. Everyone's talking about, oh, we need to educate, we need to teach people what Bitcoin is. And that's very important. I absolutely agree, but to some degree, that's only going to go so far, right? I mean, Jeffrey Tucker in the last talk, if anyone was next door, mentioned how electricity works, and almost none of us know exactly how it works when we flip a light switch on. So it's not necessarily, you know, to a certain extent, there's this sphere of education that needs to happen, and that can happen through things like social media and stories that we share about Sean's outpost and how it's positive. But there's also just a secondary kind of campaign, I think, that's not about education, but just about softening Bitcoin and making it warm and fuzzy in a lot of ways, right? And some people say we need to make Bitcoin sexy, or we need to educate and make Bitcoin sexy. It's like, I don't know if you need to make Bitcoin that sexy in order for it to work, right? Like, you need to make mom and dad want to use Bitcoin. So what kind of stories are you sharing that make it warm and fuzzy, that make it acceptable for mom and pop businesses to say, oh, that's cool, it's helping homeless people in Florida, and how does that work? Oh, you teach and educate to a certain degree, but beyond that, just make it normal. You know, how do you make it normal?
I just wanted to say, Bitcoin is already sexy. I mean, you don't have to make it sexy. It's there, man.
Well, I think it's absolutely true what you're getting at, because I blab on forever. If you see my videos, I can't keep them under 24 minutes. And all my friends tease me, how about the 2-minute video where you actually teach me something instead of me falling asleep? But some people manage to get through them, but my wife doesn't. Okay, and she doesn't care at all about Bitcoin, or hadn't, until we actually went to a meetup, and we went to a meetup at Veggie Galaxy in Boston to accept Bitcoin. And she was seeing people walk up and buy a veggie burger with Bitcoin on the phone. And then she went, I get it. That's awesome. Right? She needed human stories, like what Seth is talking about. It had nothing to do with all this technical, oh, you got the blockchain, blah, 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 you can do these types of transactions, manipulate the transactions. She didn't care at all. She wanted to see people using it. She needed those stories to learn. Just one blip, because I want to get back to the idea of charity that I think is really important. There's a lot of people talk about how Bitcoin's volatile. Well, there's something that's more volatile than Bitcoin, and that's charity dollars. So I do a lot of work around the world. So I was in Pisco when there was a big earthquake, 8.1 or something, an enormous earthquake, knocked down thousands of houses in Pisco. This was in 2008, okay? A smaller earthquake a few years before raised lots and lots of money. But in 2008, there were no charity dollars, right? Charity dollar was really big in 2006, and it just to nothing. And the same thing happened with a group I was working for in Africa. 2008 killed a lot of charities. All right, so the financial system, we like, oh, well, they kind of recovered. They've kind of come back, but they really crippled a lot of people by playing those games with housing and all that. They really were risking a lot of way people live. So I think there is sort of a, every charity knows they're doing social media. They're reaching out in every possible way there is. So I just think that's important when it comes to charity, that it's a volatile thing. So holding Bitcoins and dealing in Bitcoins is actually one level of security against volatility.
Well, I promote personal charity a lot, right? So we always say, I know you know someone who does this. The government will help them. The government should be helping these people. The government will handle this. And I always say, no, you know how the government works, right? They steal from me and then they give it to someone else. That's how they work. That's not charity, that's theft. So I encourage people to get involved in private sector charity, right? Where they actually find groups and they donate to people in need. And Bitcoin, if we can tie Bitcoin in with charities more often, it's going to add a very, very positive feel to it. Because everyone that I know that has invested in Bitcoin, they believe in private sector charity. They believe in helping people. They believe in doing whatever they can. And so as we see all these people donating using Bitcoin, it's very important, I think, to use social media to make sure that everyone is aware that this is happening. Because we know about things like Sean's Outpost, right? We know about groups that accept Bitcoin that are getting thousands of dollars in donations in Bitcoin, but who's talking about it? You don't see the media talking about it, and that's because we're not sharing it enough. So there's already a lot of charity, I think, that's going on using Bitcoin, but we have to really work on promoting it and pushing it, because otherwise the stories all stay negative.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted us to touch on. What do you guys think about the news versus social media news? Like, can we be influencing those stories on the larger news networks through our social media? Are they getting their cues from us, or are we giving them, how does that work out?
Yeah, I mean, kind of what we were talking about before, I see that social media is just another form of media. But as long as people continue to look at Bitcoin as a commodity and not as a protocol, then there's always going to be people who are investing in the commodity, and because of that, you see, just like Facebook stock is really susceptible to fluctuations based on what they report in the news in terms of earnings and stuff. You see the same fluctuations now happening in the Bitcoin, the price of the coin, and so what I'd like to see is that media would stop treating Bitcoin like Band-Aid, Kleenex, that we stop looking at it as this large brand that you can apply to everything, but rather to talk about it as they would talk about a normal rational currency, and And I think that then the social media plays a role in calling out mainstream media for their failure to discuss it reasonably, and when there are failures in the Bitcoin world, that we call them out on social media too, and not give them a pass just because they're in this interesting space.
I think that mainstream media, in an odd kind of parallel, is like a centralized system, right? That's kind of falling apart because of social media, because people are able to get their news through people that they trust, friends that they trust, Twitter feeds that are personalized to the people that you agree with more. One thing I just would say about the role of the mainstream media is just that a headline can be fire, right? I mean, anything can be fire. And it can burn things, and you can't put it out with fire. So the more you get into this hype of, you know, Mt. Gox destroys Bitcoin is a headline, and then you've got an article that's kind of empty about why that is the case. Or like today, you know, the headlines that are coming out about someone who claims they've found Satoshi, the person who started Bitcoin. I mean, the more we play into those and try and defend them even on social networks, the more you're just fighting fire with fire. I really believe in just focusing on some of the positive things of Bitcoin, like Sean's outpost, some of these stories. And if you create a big enough wave of those stories, then it won't matter what kind of smear campaigns come out. It won't matter. It'll be too overwhelming. And we have the systems to make that a reality. We have the social networks to be able to do that. It just takes the right fires being fueled and the other fires being ignored, because otherwise you're just feeding them, right? You're just pumping more oxygen into them. The only way you can do it is deprive them of oxygen, deprive them of energy, show that that's, you know, a lot of these mainstream networks are becoming obsolete on their own.
Deprive them of oxygen, deprive them of energy. They're also depriving themselves of money. They're going down hard. I mean, I almost feel bad for people who work in the media these days. You know, they have to run around with their one camera and do 10 stories on 10 different things. There's no way to compete with someone who actually lives somewhere and loves something and is able to garner response based on those things they really care about. I write about Bitcoin, right? I've got 2 other jobs that I'm doing, but when I breathe, when I think, when I'm lying in bed at night, you know, Bitcoin's swirling through my mind. Poor mainstream media person can't catch up with that. You know, we're going to be working really hard, and if I don't get it right, you know, Andreas is going to get it right? He's in the other room right now getting it right for sure, and there's a number of other people whose just voices have grown so strong. These aren't mainstream media people. Bitcoin's a real big exposure to sort of the foolishness of mainstream media, you know, Paul Krugman and all that, just getting it wrong, and they're going to continue. But who cares? You know, let them die their slow death.
I think it's not in their best interest for Bitcoin to do well. When you consider mainstream media, right, the term mainstream media, I think of you know, Fox News and CNN, right? I think of these huge companies that they don't care about us, right? They care about the money that they get. They care about corporatism, and you know, it's just a few people that own all of these companies, right? Clear Channel is like owned by like 3 people, and it's like just about every radio station in the country, right? It's not in their best interest for Bitcoin to take off because they can't control Bitcoin. They can control the headlines that come out about it right now, but not for too much longer. When I see something like this, right, this Texas Bitcoin conference, I have faith that soon we will be controlling the narrative. But the mainstream media has no desire to put out positive stories about Bitcoin because I think they're terrified of it.
That's true. Well, they also don't get anything out of putting out a positive story about Bitcoin. That's true. You get a lot more readership if you have a negative story just as a principle.
Yeah,
so
yeah. When people are
scared,
scared,
to attract
right?
that, right?
Yeah.
But just the general trend that I see is decentralization is happening across the scale. So it's happening with Bitcoin in the monetary sphere. It's happening with social media in the media sphere. I think we're going to continue seeing a leveling out because of these decentralizing technologies that are going to permeate through pretty much all of culture, probably.
Good answers, everybody. I think it's time to open up the questions to you guys. Are you guys thinking about anything while we're talking? There we go. We've got a gentleman over there.
Back to the charity aspect of it. I'm on a board of 501c3, and we have a wallet that's public. We have a wallet that's public, and what's beautiful about that, being that we're a public charity, I'm sure everybody heard what I just said, is that you can see the money come in. You can see the ledger, right? And that's extremely inspiring. So in terms of social media and virality around the use of Bitcoin for excitement, I think that if more media outlets would run polls and run public voting where you vote with millibits, like Let's Talk Bitcoin just did when they had a competition between shows, and then they were sourcing the best shows based on what the donations were, what the millibit donations were. So with public charity, it's great because you can have a wallet and everybody can see the funds go in, and when you can see it, just like a lot of those crowdsourcing sites inspire people with being able to see that goal bar. I mean, the gold bar is like an arbitrary thing. It's cool. But when you actually see the money actually hit the account, it's inspiring. It makes me want to get involved. People talk about it. If you use it as a voting system, it's great. If you use it as a form of keeping track of your ledger in a public way, it's also great. So it's an extremely powerful way to get people involved and start using it. Oh, I'm going to get some Bitcoin, or I'm going to do something, get some Bitcoin so I can be a part of this thing.
I love how that's a statement, not a question, so anyone else can make a statement too.
Cool.
Well, I think it's really important to know that that type of charity is going to eat Oxfam's lunch, right? Oxfam runs on what, 80% overhead, where they take in 80% of your $200 that you donate. So they take in $160 and spread it around amongst themselves before they actually even leaves the country. Once it leaves the country now, it ends up in dictators' hands. There's actual studies that say that you might get 1 cent out of every dollar ending up where it goes. Now imagine if the charity, like yourself, even takes it one step further, which will happen as people adopt Bitcoin, right? You'll start to see the money travel through the system, and you'll actually get to calculate exactly how much the end person, the person in Africa who's got a Bitcoin wallet, right? It'll be a free market for transparency. Your charity is going to be where I'm going to give my money, and I'm going to be very excited about that. And Oxfam's just going to go, goodbye.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent point.
Yeah. What else is on people's minds?
One other just thing to quickly add to that is that I think the more people can share through social media that they've donated 1 millibit or something like that, and the more there's an integration through apps or nonprofits that provide that, I think that you permeate social media with people sharing about how they're sharing, and it creates a wave effect.
Yeah, I always get really, really frustrated when I look at just large charity organizations. I tend to not even donate to them. Like, I'll find individuals that need help, or when there's a disaster, I'll contact the churches in the area, because I'm not going to donate to a group that spends all of their money on CEOs and on huge buildings. So I really like this idea of seeing where the money is coming from, and then seeing where it's going, and seeing how it's used. It's going to revolutionize charity. I mean, he's right. Groups that spend all their money on CEOs and overhead, they're going to be out.
I also think that what's amazing about that is once it starts, it's going to have a sort of snowball effect that we're going to see someone like yourself who we're going to go, we trust them so much, I'll give them my money for any type of charity. Right? And you could see just one person being the broker of enormous amounts of charity, because their trust level, the free market that's developed for their transparency, is so powerful that it just makes no sense to give your money anywhere else. So yeah, I really applaud that, and I'm very excited about that aspect.
Mine has to do with the media discrediting Bitcoin. However, they had no problem taking Charlie Shrem's money, so that kind of give validation to Bitcoin. So what is, where did that necessarily put Bitcoin in standing?
You can't keep a good idea from being adopted. No matter what the mainstream media does, it's not going to stop the adoption of Bitcoin.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Well, the media is discrediting Bitcoin. They had no problem publicizing that Charlie Shrem's money was taken away, the Bitcoin account. I'm not sure how many, either 28 million was taken away, and they publicized it in the media quite clearly, to, I guess, make him a pariah.
There were reporters in the airport when he got arrested, and he got arrested coming into the country. But they reported saying that he was at the airport, so everybody else would assume that he was fleeing. He was actually coming in from talking about Bitcoin elsewhere. I don't know Charlie at all. I've seen him speak. I've heard what he's written. I've read what he's written. And I will cry a river if he ends up going to jail. I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful kid. He's a young man. And the case they have against him, unfortunately, they might get him on. Not because he did anything wrong, but that's how Fed cases work, where they're now going to turn to anyone who ever knew him, and they're going to threaten them with some sort of deal where they've got to kind of flip Charlie over and put him in jail for 15 years just because they want to make another stab at Bitcoin, right? What do regulators and people do? Well, they regulate. What do FBI do? They arrest people, right? They get tired of not doing that, right? Bears eat blackberries, right? They want to eat blackberries. So unfortunately, it'll be the saddest day. I hope he becomes our Rosa Parks, but he could be our Nelson Mandela.
I just want to add that I'm really terrified about what's going to happen to Charlie, because this will set a precedent, right? This is what they're doing. They want all of you to be scared about using Bitcoin, right? And how do they do that? They take someone in the spotlight who's an open advocate and evangelist. He's out there promoting and pushing and saying positive things, and he's literally changing the world. So what do? They throw him in a cage for the flimsiest of reasons. I mean, it's such a horrible, horrible argument. So what happens if we just sit here and we let him go to jail? If we don't start protesting and start using our hashtags and using social media and start talking about this nonstop, he's going to end up in a cage for a very long time, and that will set a very bad record. Because if we let him go to a cage for simply selling Bitcoin, what happens to the rest of us, right? What happens to the next person who sells Bitcoin? What happens to the Bitcoin meetups and the other exchanges? It's very, very scary, and people really need to be focusing on this.
That, and I think these kind of things have happened throughout history, right? You find a martyr for something and you stuff them in a cage, make an example out of them. But what's different now is the evolving transparency that we can take advantage of, right? Sharing through social media, through stories, getting the information out there, embedded within memes, however you can get it to spread virally. We have the opportunity to illuminate what's happening in a way that hopefully leads to less of a toleration of this kind of thing. And that's what it will come down to, is if we can get the information out there properly, then it comes down to, a population to decide if they want to tolerate it or not.
Do we have any more questions? Okay. That's it, I guess. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming and talking with us.
We've still got time, right?
Oh, yeah. Why? You want to talk?
Yeah. I want to.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Okay. So we're here to talk about social media, right? And social media is very, very, very important. So I tend to do politics, right? And when I looked at the numbers from the 2008 election, 84% of people between the ages of 18 to 29 had seen some political news and made decisions about who they were voting for using social media, using just Facebook, right? And so every single person that's here needs to make sure that they are utilizing social media, right? So you use social media to talk to, your mom, or to talk to your grandma, or to talk to some chick you went to school with, right? But are you using social media to reach other people about the things that are important to you? Like, look, I share pictures of my food. I do that. I'm that person. But I also, right? Just open and honest, man. I totally Instagram pictures of dinner. But I also make sure that people know about the news that is important to me, and I try to have open and honest discussions about how I feel about things. I make sure that I use Tumblr. The audience on Tumblr is mainly between the ages of 14 to about 24, right? And there are millions of kids that are on Tumblr, and I reach them all and share stories about Bitcoin and the police state and make sure that they know what's happening. Because how do you know that if you don't share this story, how do you know someone else is going to? Right? So you need to make sure that you are, hashtags are extremely important, sharing links, pictures, right? Facebook has algorithms, and they change their algorithms a lot, but they show pictures to people more often than they show news stories, right? So if there's a story that you want to get information out about, make a picture about it and share that picture, and that picture will get shown to more people than sharing a link from, you know, whatever website. And so we just need to make sure that everyone is trying to change the narrative using social media. I don't know if you guys have any advice regarding social media that you would want to share.
Yeah, I like to think about it as like we've got this big organism of society, right? And when you put out something on social media, it's a little cell that could be a virus, right? It goes viral. So how are you designing that cell to accomplish what you want it to accomplish? Is it just a photo that has some URL attached to it, which is really the carrier that you're trying to, you know, you're creating a vessel of a photo, which is easily shareable, and then what's the underlying, you know, end result, which is to go to that link, which is the behavior that you're trying to get. But just as a general insight, I would think about if you're trying to catalyze social change through social media, who are you messaging to? And getting a clear picture of that, I think, is critical, that a lot of people don't do. We all have our perceptions of what we think is right or what we want to change in the world, and we put it out there in a raw fashion without considering the other perspective. And I think one exercise that can kind of help with that is write down exactly what the benefits are of what you want to change, whatever it is, whatever your cause is. Write down the characteristics of the people, the demographic, I guess you could conceive it as, and where there might be a middle ground there, or what sorts of things would maybe be a middle ground that you have in common with them, and avoiding the things that will just flare up defense mechanisms, because that's not going to help you. And that's just one thing that I would put more energy into, the things that you can get someone to say, like Sean's Outpost, for example, rather than saying Bitcoin is basically porn for anarchists. Like, it's so exciting for us because now we can move into a new, you know, epoch of history. Yeah, you're gonna confuse a lot of people who don't have a foundation for that, you know? So say something about Sean's Outpost and how it's helping people. Everybody can agree on that. And you build off of these little mounds of common ground. I think that's one thing to consider, is just messaging when you're doing social media. Who are you talking to?
Yeah, and that's great. I had to laugh there, by the way. Social media has been waiting for its gasoline, right? There's people have been making social media for a long time, and media is losing its gasoline, right? Fewer and fewer people are watching it, fewer dollars are going to their advertising. But Bitcoin is the gasoline now for social media. I put out my long-ass, boring videos, right? And people send Bitcoin tips. Now, some of them are 5 cents. They feel great. But I've gotten tips of well over $250, and all my tips go to one address, and I've just left them there, you know, on that address. But anyone can see, you know, and you can see and learn from that model, okay, well, James is doing this. If I tweak this, and he's made this amount, maybe I could actually spend less time working at the grocery store and more time producing these videos about these ideas that I'm working on. I can knock James off his little, you know, bring it on, you know, that's awesome. But it provides the gasoline, right? It provides the ability for someone who's working a lot maybe to get out of where they're at. And that gasoline, the beauty of Bitcoin, can be in Uganda, where my wife is from. It can be in Peru, where I was working. You know, it's amazing. It can go to anyone, anywhere. And don't be fooled. My little brother-in-law, I sent him Bitcoins in June, thinking it would take him till December to cash them. He ran out to the bus station, said, "Does anybody know about Bitcoin?" And in 10 minutes, he had sold them and was able to buy food. And it's a phenomenal story. There's actually documentary filmmakers out there interviewing him right now. It's on the blockchain, it's all there. But it's phenomenal, right? Why? Because people in Uganda can't buy Bitcoin. They can't go to Coinbase, right? They can't apply a Mt. Gox. Mt. Gox is going to look at Uganda, get the hell out of here, right? So there's a hunger to use this stuff. And so Bitcoin would really work, right? If you're a Ugandan blogger and they speak English and they have beautiful ideas, this is going to provide something to them. This is going to provide more than just an income.
I have a question, and this is with a little bit of ignorance. So what you said right now about blockchain not accepting transactions from Uganda, what I'm understanding and what I'm hearing is Bitcoin is a large, open, happy transfer rather than
Coinbase has actually chosen so far to stay only in the United States. Mt. Gox is notoriously picky. I got rejected from Mt. Gox. There are a bunch of exchanges that are reaching out, but they're all subject to their local regulations and so difficulties. But there is bias. I'm not going to play with you, right? There is bias at the exchanges. The exchanges are not Bitcoin. The exchanges are people working in certain businesses. Coinbase has a lot of regulatory issues here, but you're going to see these exchanges pop up. And the beauty of Uganda is there was an exchange in Uganda that day. It was the guy standing at the bus station with his cell phone. He was a full-fledged exchange. You don't need Coinbase. You don't need Mt. Gox. And Mycelium just introduced a wallet. I don't know if you're familiar with Uber, where you can get a car anywhere. Well, they introduced a wallet which shows you where people are selling Bitcoins anywhere, and if you want to buy Bitcoins, right? If this system takes over, you don't need any exchange, right? This is just landing everywhere. And really, this is going to make a big, big difference. So Bitcoin's young. Give it a little time. All these things are going to work out, and it's going to erase all borders and all that stuff.
Yeah. Bringing it back to social media, I've noticed when I post on Facebook like something that my 4-year-old says that's really cute, I'll get like 50 comments and likes, and then I'll post something about, you know, something political or did this to this person or whatever, and it's like crickets.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, I know that you especially, but the panel has more experience using social media. Are there any like triggers? Is there anything that you can
She's gonna
with like a hashtag or bringing it in with, you know, whatever?
So links automatically get a lot less visibility than direct statements. Yeah. So.
There are two different tricks that I tend to utilize, one less than the other. The first is kittens. I'm not kidding, man, kittens, all right? But puppies, pictures of cute little animals, right? And then you can turn those into memes, right? Where you add like, I've done a series on the NSA cat, right? So I've got like a cat that is like staring at you and it's like, oh, NSA cat is watching you do this, NSA cat is watching you do that. But also, and this one I don't use as much because it makes me feel really awkward, but if you ever want to really reach a lot of people and you're not sure how to do it, include a grammatical error. You will get hundreds of comments from people that are like, no, it's T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E, right? But then you'll also end up with people coming back and reading the thread and commenting on it, right? So one grammatical error will just, you know.
People love to help you along.
Yeah. Say I'm in a hurry and I see something that I love, right?
So true.
Does it matter if I just post it with no introduction or feedback of my own, or does it help to have like my own, you know, sounding board and be like, this is my emotional take on it or whatever? Does that help or add anything to whether or not it's going to be clicked on?
Do you mean like a vent or a rant?
No, like if I just go, I really like this article, but I'm not going to post anything of myself. I just post it.
Yeah, the Facebook algorithm shows that much less than a direct statement.
Put
yeah,
on there.
Right. I mean, I think that's mathematically proven over and over again in the insights that Facebook gives, like their analytics.
Yeah, I would say for that, you can include a statement, right? So post a statement from you. If you get very emotionally charged, either up or down, then that will increase the way that people react to it. And every time that someone comments on one of your posts or likes one of your posts, it shows up in their activities. So it shows up on your friend's newsfeed. Now, so then I would also include the link to the article, but you know how there's that little X button in the corner? Right, so like when you post something, there's your statement, you know, this is how I feel, whatever, and then it'll show you what the link looks like when you post it, right? So I would include the address to the article and then X out of it so it doesn't actually include the link to the article, because Facebook shows when you post a link, Facebook shows it to less than 1% of your audience. Less than 1%. It's actually, I think, less than half of 1%. So they're less inclined to show those to people. So the status updates, you know, it will count as a status update if you X out of the link to the article. So you can still have the link there, the address, but just not have it attached, and that will increase the number of people that it's shown to.
Yeah, crazy rants where someone has to click to see more. If they start to get engagement, then you can put your links in the comments, is how I do it.
Oh, yeah.
I also think you sound like you're very politically minded at times, right? Maybe move your ideas to one particular place, like Tumblr or something like that, and then build that reputation, right? You'll find that it'll build slowly. Like when I put out my first video, I was really excited when it got 10 hits, right? You know, now I put one out, I could say almost anything, and I know I'm going to get 1,000. You build trust in your ideas, right? Even as crazy as you think they are, as she suggested earlier, right? If you like to cut off your toenails and eat them, the internet has a place for you. Other people will follow you, okay? So, but you have to build that. You can't just post that the first time. They just go, you're weird. But then one guy will be like, God, I wish I could hit like, but then people would think I'm crazy, right? You got to build. You have to let your personality build. Like I noticed that I was able to speak a lot more when I had separated me from my Facebook, right? The political voice.
Specific account that is just purely around this idea. My husband and I have a nonprofit called Parents for Liberty.
Yeah, yeah.
It drives me nuts that when I post stuff about that on my personal page.
Yeah, don't. Just leave that alone. And just build your one personality. Be really strong. Even, you know, just completely don't even message your Facebook thing at all, right? Just divorce them, right? And let the people who want to come to that, and then let the people who want to see your kids come to that. But don't assume, as she suggested, that the people in your small town are going to want to come to both, right? Let the world come to your ideas.
Is there a social media that any of you guys can say, this is what I prefer to reach out to people? This is what I like better?
I prefer Tumblr. I do. Yeah, they have a lot of GIFs on there, the animated pictures, and there's a lot of porn. But the audience for Tumblr is a younger audience, and I find them getting very interactive and very interested. And I would say once every 2 weeks now, I've got a post on Tumblr that has 150,000 shares. So they're getting really animated, and they're getting really interested, and I'm seeing them get frustrated about police states and loving this and loving that. And so I prefer Tumblr. Now, what he said for separating your accounts, you can always make a fan page too, right? So do you have a Facebook fan page?
We do for our organization, but
fan pages suck now.
I mean,
everybody's changing to groups now because people aren't seeing.
I hate the groups, man. I hate the groups.
Do Tumblr. Do Tumblr.
Groups from their fan pages. So there's one woman that I work with, and she has like 100,000 readers on Facebook, 100,000 likes, and she's like over Facebook. Another one has 50,000. They've changed it to a group, and they're rebuilding their entire platform again. Like several people in the last week are moving because they're not reaching their audience anymore.
Well, see, I just I try to build up everywhere, right? Yeah. So I build up on Twitter, and I build up on YouTube, and I build up on Tumblr, and I build up on Facebook, and I still am able to reach people using the Facebook fan page. It's not as many, It's not. Oh, God, yes. But this is why I'm really utilizing Tumblr and preferring Tumblr, because they don't do that. Tumblr shows you everything that's posted by the people that you follow, and it shows it in the order that they posted it. So every single person that follows me will see all of my posts if they just scroll down the feed. There's no, all right, we're going to show this to, half of 1% of your audience. It's not like that.
I'd also say that if you haven't used If This Then That, IFTTT.com, that's a really easy way, and you can create recipes that spread your Tumblr posts through all kinds of media, Hootsuite as well.
Tumblr is like images.
It can be blogs. It
can be very bloggy.
It can be music. It can be video. It can be a lot of things.
And I would
remember to put your Bitcoin address at the bottom of all your posts.
She might be thinking of Pinterest.
Yeah, it sounds.
Also,
I'm totally horrible.
Tumblr's very bloggy.
To add to that, I would meet your audience. I mean, ultimately, you want to meet your audience where they are. If people are strongest for your particular demographic on Pinterest, then put more energy into Pinterest. And with any of that, I think you need to experiment a little bit. Am I getting a lot of activity on Facebook, or am I getting more activity on Twitter? And look at what you're doing on Twitter versus Facebook. And maybe it's something about the setup of Twitter versus Facebook that you should put more energy into that. And that goes with the post too. Your question about, how do you design a post that works well? Make 10 experimental methods for, posting a certain way. Put a kitten on one of them and then see if you can put a link in there. And what we need to be careful of, though, right, is just making it this completely obsolete connection between a kitten picture and your link about Parents for Liberty, right? But you learn a lot from doing that, right? I mean, that it works. It might work, but it's not going to work forever, right? Eventually, someone will be like, "Oh yeah, it's a kitten picture," but she always posts a link underneath it that I don't care about. Thanks for the kitten picture, I like it, but is that translating to what you really want? So you need to find the medium, right? You need to experiment with it, and if there's ways to track, and maybe you could speak more to this because I know a lot less about the algorithmic side of this, but if there's ways to track your results did they just like the kitten picture, or did they go through to the link, and which one, and then do 10 experiments on that, which one was most successful, try that again, and then keep so with everything, test the waters a little bit, measure your results, and then augment more into it.
I got really I can't do all of these. Small business owner mommy.
So focus on where you're getting the biggest results, and keep putting more energy into those places.
Really try Hootsuite and use some of the analytic tools that you can get in there too.
Yeah. I just recently started using Twitter more often, and do you guys have any tips about getting Twitter traction and creating your persona on Twitter? How you should divide your personal self from a persona that you want, or setting?
I think you follow a lot of people, curate your lists, and then you like everything that has something to do with what you're really interested in.
Like it and retweet it, or
retweet it too. But even just a like sends a signal back to somebody that you're out there and that you appreciate what they've done, and that's a pretty good way to make people like you.
And to add to that, don't just follow anybody though. Follow the people that are interested in your content. So for example, with Voice and Exit, if we follow TED because they have a similar format for talks, now we can see all of their followers, and hopefully they follow us back. And now we've got all of their followers as well. So what I would look into is following the people that speak to the audience that you want to speak to, right? And hopefully they follow you back. And another way to kind of mine, just real quick, to mine good followers, ones who are actually interested in what you're posting, is go through the followings of people who also speak to your audience. Right? So find another example of someone who speaks to the audience that you want to speak to. Just go through their follower list and follow a bunch of them, and hopefully they follow you back. And then you start putting content.
Do that on Twitter?
It doesn't matter. You can do it. And there's actually software that can help you unfollow people who don't follow you back. So you start augmenting. The people who actually care about what you're posting, and it's a good way of having a radar for people who would be interested in the content that you're going to put out.
Do you have something for that?
Go ahead.
They've got 7 minutes to get to wherever they're going for their next presentation.
Okay, well then,
She'll
never
wrap
mind.
it up. No, you wrap it up.
Oh, well, I was just going to say the liking and the retweeting and the commenting to people that you want to follow you is very important, because I get a lot of followers, and I tend to not even notice most of them unless they speak to me directly. So unless I see it in my interactions, then I, you know.
Put your Bitcoin address on there.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.